Where's that?
I was going to say the cute factor is an obvious thing with Toothless
Yes.
because of his eyes, his mouth, his jaw, his puppy kind of qualities. And that would have been hard to think about, at least in terms of live action translation.
Completely, yeah. And the kind of, I mean, I had one of my neighbours, their daughter, said, "You better make him cute." You know, it was like that pressure of, but very quickly with that kind of like reined in the kind of like making him too scaly, because I'm petrified of snakes. You know, when we had one for when we did Nagini for Beast 2. I briefed everything, and then I was the other side of the studio why they brought the real boa constrictor in, because I just could not even be in the same, nowhere near it.
I thought that was spiders, isn't it?
Snakes, spiders, sharks. All
You're
of
in the
above.
wrong country.
Yeah, you must do really well.
Yeah. I need to move here.
Welcome to the Visual Effects Notes podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Action VFX and their brand new Introduction to Comfy UI for VFX course.
Become the compositor studios can't afford to replace. Easily harness the full power of Comfy UI using Action VFX's Introduction to Comfy UI for VFX course. Taught by Doug Hogan, a VFX artist with 18 years of VFX experience and countless credits within the VFX industry. Within this course, you'll learn how to install Comfy UI, quickly generate clean plates, create utility passes, speed up set extensions, create 3D models from images, and so much more. You'll also get free EXR footage, workflows, and cheat sheets. So visit actionvfx.com to sign up today and become the compositor studios want to hire.
And we have a special treat for the Visual Effects Notes podcast listeners. Use the code COMFY10VFX to get an exclusive 10% discount for this course. And now on to the show.
Christian, welcome to the bunker.
Thank you. It's amazing to be here.
You made it.
Yeah.
You always keep calling it a bunker, but it's on the first floor. I never.
Yeah, you won't be very safe here. You won't be safe here. But it's definitely, all I can say is it's definitely draining the local area. Of the power grid is definitely, I wouldn't want to see your electricity bill, but yeah. No.
I love being here. It's so fun to have you here. Thank you for making How to Train Your Dragon. I've seen it 3 times. I think we saw it
twice.
Together.
Yeah,
It's just such a great film. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I was kind of a small part of it, really. It's a massive team, but it's certainly been it's just been amazing to be part of something that's just, I think in visual effects, and it's one of those things that's hard to say, but the Venn diagram of good film, great work, great fun, all those things, that centre bit is very rarely filled, and I think How to Train Your Dragon was one of those things that almost feels to me like a once in a career opportunity where all of that sort of stuff came together, because it was hard work, but we did have fun and I met some amazing people.
I wonder though, were you nervous to make it? And the reason I ask that question is because it's obviously an animated film and animated films, and it has this love, from the DreamWorks films that can sometimes be tricky to turn into a live action film. We've seen this happen, some very successful ones and some others that struggle. I mean, I think you nailed it. So just to be clear.
Yeah.
But I wonder, were you nervous going into it?
Completely. I mean, I think my one of my first questions to Dean when I met him was why? Because even at that point, which was October 22 when I first started, it was kind of like, there were a lot of animated remakes, and it was already that sort of genre was already beginning to get a bit of, not getting love out there in the world. So, and Dean was very clear that, the first movie actually him and Chris Sanders came on to late. They came in, they dropped in to that sort of halfway through its production. So they only had about 15 months, I think, to rewrite, remake and whatever. So Toothless was the only thing that was their design. So everything else became a kind of a compromise, I guess, in design terms. And so I think it was an opportunity for him to tell that story as he really wanted to tell it visually, as well as, and also with I think John Powell, the composer, said to me, he said he almost feels that they tricked people into seeing an animated movie because it's actually it's just a really good story.
Yeah.
It's a really good story that doesn't have to be animated. It almost feels like one of those ones that maybe at the time it wasn't possible or wouldn't be, and it feels like now's the time that it could be made. And, I just have a thing that, Christmas Carol. I've seen the Christmas Carol done multiple times. It's a really good story, and it's remade in different ways in different sort of media, different media and whatever. And I think it was ripe for remaking. But yeah, I'm very aware, having come out of the Wizarding world, I'm very aware, and Dean is very aware of that sort of the fan base, the love for the franchise, for that world, and the responsibility that you have when you're, being a key part of bringing it into sort of live action was, that's, and that was the same with Fantastic Beasts. The characters you were dealing with, you had to be, I always felt, and I think our team, we always felt very responsible to make sure that we were doing the right thing with that world, because, as soon as you put that stuff out there, the world owns it as well, as in a way. And you just want to make sure you don't want to compromise creatively, and you want to stick to a lane. I believe once you've decided as a group that's what the approach, rather than being guided by what other people are saying or what the internet might say. But having said that, when the internet, like Toothless, when the trailer came out, that was one of the biggest reliefs of the whole production.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to say, I did love the animated films, but there might be someone in this room who has never seen the animated How to Train Your Dragon.
He admitted that to me, having just watched it, I think, for the first time, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've never. Yeah, I know. Like I went to the screening, to the Visual Effects Society screening. You were there. It was a really nice screening with the Q&A at the end and everything. But yeah, I didn't know anything about it at all. I had no idea. I'll be honest. I only came because I know you, and I figured this is gonna be good. I'm sure. And I had no idea what it was. I was completely disconnected from this world. I had no idea about this that had several sequels and everything. I don't know how that happened. Because I don't know how it happened. I just didn't watch them.
Well, I'd only seen the original because I had kids.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't have kids.
That was my thing. It was not a genre that I would watch.
Yeah, maybe it was that because I don't have kids and I don't usually watch a lot of animation movies. So I didn't, but I love the movie. I thought, and everyone just kept telling me, "Oh, but the original is better. The original is better." I think the movie is amazing. Like I much prefer the live action version than the original one. I've now watched it.
Oh, you have?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I have now watched the original. I only watched the first one, and it's a good movie and it's quirky and it's nice. But I just found the film, the one that you guys made. I don't know, just something special, and I thought it was like really heartfelt, and the performance is really good, and because it's not a goofy animation, because it's not an animated movie, it's a real movie, and it has reality, and it's for real. It really touches you, and I thought that the story was really touching, and yeah, I loved it.
But that was the big thing about it, I think, was to be part of something. And Dean said to us from the start, as a production on the production, and then in post-production, that he really wanted us all to be part of something that we'd be really proud of, and that we could take our family to, and they would enjoy, and be proud of us. And that seems to have really happened. That's the thing here, and it's really nice to make something where you are. I mean, I worked on that film for 2.5 years. By the end, I'd seen the film a lot. But I still found myself getting emotional at different parts, and and it's the perfect combination of obviously what we've done, the story, the performances, the music, the sound, the everything, just combined to make that, which is what film is. It's that.
Yeah, but it's interesting you having now seen the original and now knowing how, I'm not going to say simplistic the original is, but let's put it out there. It's a Toothless is a model that's not needing to be photoreal in the original film. We want to talk to you about making that translation and what was hard about that, literally with that character Toothless.
that was probably one of the hardest things of the whole project, and that was the first engagement. The first engagement was to, before the film was a film, was to do a test, which I got because Peter Kramer, who's president of Universal Pictures, who had talked to Dean about making an animated remake and a live action remake of the animation, wasn't convinced that Toothless could be real, and his touchstone was the hippogriff from Harry Potter, which was lucky because Framestore and I we'd worked on that, and Andy Kind, who was the supervisor for us in London, was a big part of that. And so Michael Eames, who was the animation supervisor on that, who's now head of animation at Framestore, he worked with me, and we had the VizDev team at Framestore we worked for about 3 months on that project. And funny enough, Framestore Pictures had directed I think it was like a commercial or some kind of thing linked to Film 3 with Kit Harington.
Yes.
Acting with the DreamWorks Toothless, and it's kind of like one of those sort of like mucking up takes and Toothless
bloopers sort of thing, yeah.
And that actually was the thing of, that's not what we want, because that's the animated character, but we want. So from the beginning, much like Fantastic Beasts, the brief was, it's an animal. Toothless is an animal. He's not a character.
Yeah.
And so the beginning of all that journey was just looking at real stuff. We got all the assets from, luckily Dean's, can say, can we get this? And then very quickly we got assets. Dean even sent us a sideshow sculpt, one of the sideshow sculpts of, Toothless that Michael and I nearly broke as we tried to put it together. And the initial thing was really looking, and Michael has that sensibility as well, where we were looking to not break the design and what makes him appealing, but at the same time trying to make him real. So we were looking at all of the salamanders and oxalotls, as well as panthers, and because again, like Fantastic Beasts, it was like he looks like one thing but actually behaves like another animal, because that's often charming as well. So with a team, the VizDev team, talented, small, so it's kind of like the VizDev team at Framestore is like a sort of a I don't know, kind of like a cut down version of the VFX pipeline, where you can do quickly prototype stuff through doing it in Blender, and so even though Michael had somebody animating in Maya and wherever, we were baking it, putting it into Blender, working in Photoshop, paintovers and everything to come up with what he looked like. So you had the talent of an amazing, Stefan Meyer was an amazing sculptor and could sculpt and find him. And as we were doing it, we were suddenly realizing just stuff like proportionally he was wrong. The head had to be smaller, the neck had to be longer, the head has to be smaller than that. Everything that you look at real lizards and animals. And then we started putting him into poses, and then we were like, oh, we're going to put him, because it's that typical thing of, should we just put him in Framestore to render him? And it was like, well, no, let's go out. So I went out, I borrowed a HDRI kit from Dom Ridley from Clear Angle, and I went out with my dog into the woods and reminded myself how to take HDRI setups. But I was took my SLR, took plates, still plates, and then took the HDRIs to match. And there, the thing was, it was the autumn, so it was muddy. There was nice light, but there was also some stuff that wasn't lit very well, as in wasn't sunny. So we could start rendering him and putting him and comping into those photographs to see and I even took my son Samuel came with us as well, and he posed in some of the images so we could start seeing what he looked like with a human being. So it was all those relationships with, we knew that a lot of the stuff from the hippogriff, the pumpkin patch scene in Prisoner of Azkaban still looks amazing, and that's because they shot it they took that Hagrid's hut up to Scotland and shot it in the rain and everything. So you've got the hippogriff slipping on mud, and it just has that real feel to it. And Burke is an island in the North Atlantic. So over that period of 3 months, we worked away. We showed some stuff, and I remember one thing was, because initially everybody wanted him Toothless to be really big and to be a dragon. He's got to be big, and And we showed one thing at one point to Donna Langley, who is the head of Universal, and she was like, "But where's Toothless? Where's that cuteness? Where's
Yes,
that?"
I was going to say the cute factor is an obvious thing with Toothless
Yes.
because of his eyes, his mouth,
Yeah.
his jaw, his puppy kind of qualities. And that would have been hard to think about, at least in terms of live action translation.
Completely, yeah.
Yeah.
And the kind of, I had one of my neighbours, their daughter, said, "You better make him cute." It was like that pressure of, but very quickly with that kind of like reined in the kind of like making him too scaly, because I'm petrified of snakes. When we had one for when we did Nagini for Beast 2, I briefed everything, and then I was the other side of the studio why they brought the real boa constrictor in, because I just could not even be in the same, nowhere near it.
I thought that was spiders, isn't it?
Snakes, spiders, sharks. All
You're
of
the
above.
wrong
Yeah,
country
you must do
there.
really well.
Yeah. I need to move here. Anyway,
you love mice and rats, but hate all but that kind of really then honed us into like, right, now we do have to make him scaly but appealing and make him that cute character. So he is bigger than, in the end he's like 30 foot long. He is a big animal, and a lot of that relationship came as well when we moved into, so obviously we're here talking about it, so that test was successful and we got to carry on. So that process carried on through into pre-production. We started animating him, putting him into picking different scenes from the script for the animated film, and working out how to make all of those look real, like Toothless leaping on Hiccup when he starts seeing him making a fire, him sitting down. And again, you realised how much Dean said how much they cheated. So he's different sizes and different scenes in the animated film, and that was a big learning process for Dean, because I said, we're not cheating, he has to be the same size.
Yeah, that's come up a lot when I've covered some of these, Disney films that got translated to live action. In that, in a 2D world or even in early 3D films, you can animate a character doing crazy moves or get away with motion blur.
Yeah.
And also, what I've heard before is that they say, because you've got to, when you do your live action character, you've got to move it properly.
Yes.
It actually adds minutes to the film.
Well, that was the thing.
It's time.
As our film, people are like, why is it longer? The original is 80. The original I know is 88 minutes without the credits. Our film is just under 2 hours, plus credits. But we've got 2 scenes are taken out of it, and that's all because the actors move slower and speak slower. Toothless, when Hiccup is picked up by Stoic in the animated film, it's like, but in our film, Jerry has to kneel down, walk over, pick him up, try and get, and all of that just takes time. And Glenn McIntosh, our animation supervisor, he said from the very beginning, it'll all be about 20% slower, all the animation, And obviously 20% slower of 90 minutes, you're already adding, But a lot of that just becomes also, I just think editorial, everything, you just have to let stuff breathe more when you're cutting
and
a
animation
film.
is a different rhythm, completely different rhythm, because it's so much snappier and
Snappier.
exactly.
So actually, there's story that's not in that was taken out, but the film's still longer. But otherwise, it would have been another like 15, 20 minutes long, And so that was a big part of it. And Toothless and the other dragons fitting in the sets and all that stuff became a real concern, because I said, we can't cheat it. He's with Mason. When Mason was cast, that scale relationship, we knew that Astrid. So when Nico was cast, both of them would be riding him. So all of that journey in pre-production, we did so much animation, developing stuff before they were cast. When they were cast, we started working with all the physical stuff that had to be built, like saddles and everything was built on a physical sculpt that was made from all our models. All of the, how does the mechanics work? How do the pedals work? How does all of that connect to the tail? All of that stuff that they had worked it all out, and Dean could go, oh yeah, it's this. and it was great to have that. And also, to be honest, not only the director but the writer of that world working with you, who could explain stuff, and also knew all of the work that DreamWorks had done. So in working out mechanics and all that sort of stuff, so we could, bring that into the real world as well. But the journey of Toothless was from that October 22, and then when we showed Peter Kramer in September 24, here's a shot with him in. He was like, "Yeah, that's great. That's," and that was the kind of like, which was a few weeks before the trailer.
Yeah.
Oh,
But that journey was a long one,
right?
because it was all of that pre-production before we'd shot a frame, and then filming it and finding performances, because performance is more than half of Toothless. And then starting to get it into post-production where we could work up his performance based upon everything that we'd filmed, So crafting a character like that just takes a lot of time, a lot of people, and a lot of care, And
Especially because one of the most crucial things now that I've seen the animation is that because it's a CG animation, you can work around it and frame it around the dragons, and you can frame around the size of that dragon, and you can easily just stage all the cameras. But because you were shooting real footage, you were shooting real actors, and you had no dragons there, of course.
Yes.
It must have become a massive problem of trying to just frame this and just trying to have them all in frame, and where you have Toothless head and you have the other actor's head. Because in CG, we can just, we just change the lens, or we just move the camera around,
we can cheat a bit.
We can just cheat it so much easier. So must have been a huge process to try to sort that out.
Yeah, lensing was actually really, because Dean, again, all the time I was like, Dean there's lots of rules of Toothless about what angle his head should be, what to make him appealing. And that comes down to what lenses you shoot him on as well. And we worked out that basically a 35 to 40 was the widest you could be, because otherwise he looks like he's got a lollipop head and a small body. And all of that, was as we were in pre-production working out. And that's where, I guess, the puppets came in, when I watched the animated film, I knew it was enormous, not only because the amount of animation, but because all the dragons being touched or ridden or whatever for the whole movie. And so the puppets, which, was a thing that we had done on Fantastic Beasts, we obviously working with Tom and the gang, and Tom Wilton and the gang, and Stitches and Glue making us something. That was one thing, and their presence on set meant that they were there, and honestly still feel, because I always remember one scene on Fantastic Beasts, and it was the same one here, where feels like it's a theatrical performance, and when you're watching it, it's just, he's there, Toothless is there, and that's what they're giving the actors, and the actors give something back to them, and it goes the other way, and I think that's why he feels like he's in that, because he was in a way.
I was going to say, of all the films I've seen in the last couple of years that have human actors, human people with CG creatures, this really is one of the most interactive, right? As you say, there's riding, so and we'll get to that, I think, with some gimbal and motion-based work. But there's very intimate scenes between Hiccup and Toothless in the Cove that I just can't imagine the actor doing with the tennis ball on a stick.
No.
I just can't imagine how they would have achieved it.
And even to the thing that Stitches and Glue and Tom came up with, the idea of having, so based upon stop motion animation, the head had different eyes that they could stick in that had different emotions.
Like replacement animation, but just
so it's kind of like, just so that Mason had something to work off of.
Yeah.
And it's a two-way thing. He's a scene partner, and a lot of the time just with Mason as well. So they need to be giving each other something. It can't just be it's not just it's just there. And also for Bill Pope, our DP, for Carsten Jakobsen, our ACAM op as well, they were blown away by it, and therefore really bought into it, and also we had Farsight Go, so the Framestore FPS tool that we'd used, which is an iPad tool with based upon, it's an app based upon Unreal Engine, and you can, I'd used it on Fantastic Beasts for doing the thing of, it's kind of like to replace NCAM as a way of putting sets in. So we could, you could locate the set extension around us and then walk around with the iPad. And
so it's an AR
AR app.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it was really useful on Fantastic Beasts because it was the third one of those. Again, George Richmond really bought into that, and it became the first film where we didn't reframe one shot because George had the bravery to shoot the sky and a soundstage and then onto the set, knowing that it would become New York or whatever. Here, the thing was to pull the animation in, so we could bring in the dragons, but also, as it was all being developed, as we were in pre-production, bring them in as animation. So they would bake out what Ken Garcia and a team had been making as animation cycles, but also the vignettes of Toothless leaping or whatever, and bring that in. So you could have a menu of Toothless and all the different things that you could bring up, and then drop him in, move him around, and make sure he was in the right spot. And it became again, Carsten would grab that. You could also select the lenses that you're shooting on, so that you can kind of go, oh yeah, that's where he should be. You know, our Patrick Loungeway, our second unit DP, the scene where Toothless is fighting a monstrous nightmare, where there is nothing there, we had all of that animation. So he was going around with the iPad, running around, filming the shot, and then he'd put it onto his phone and then put it on the wheels when he was shooting the plates, and he'd be matching what he had shot. And then when we then put the animation in, it's like, oh, it kind of works. Great. That's brilliant. Yeah. But we also used it with the puppets, because we could go, Tom, you're standing too high. We could get him into the right position. So all of that became a really, there were lots of tools to make sure that what we were doing was right. I mean, the hardest stuff, the stuff that made us feel sick, thinking about how are we going to do this, was the two Toothless in the arena being sort of attacked by the Vikings and then brought down by them, because it was, it's hard enough when you've got one person, but when like 30 people in unison have to be hitting a mark in the right place to bring something down.
What did you do?
Well, it was a kind of like it wasn't the most, it didn't, for the multi-million-dollar film that we were making, it was a combination of Tom and the puppet stuff, but we also used Roy, our stunt coordinator, his stunt mats and everything, and effectively built kind of like a Toothless that and then used the Farsight to line it all up so that Jerry could sit on it stoic, but also that we were like, oh, there's the wings and that's where the legs are and everything, so that everybody could leap at it and run in and hopefully hit the right spot. And again, in the film, there's no digital people doing that. It's all real people hitting there, and Stitches and Glue had made wrestle heads as well, so a more hard. So Tom Milton was buried under there as well, holding Toothless's head. So when he's slammed to the ground, that is a Toothless head that's being done like that. So yeah, we didn't replace. It was really difficult. The amount of obviously body tracking all of those hands, and it was really difficult work, but it really paid off because it was just there. It was and and you could direct it and whatever. So it was and we had all of the filming in Belfast as we had all the changeable weather and everything that also made it feel just more visceral and more real, particularly in that scene. So but yeah, that was the one that we were like, how are we gonna do this?
It's so good.
But the puppets, sorry.
No, go ahead.
But the puppet is a brilliant thing, because I've used puppet in the past in commercials, not in films, but I always get amazed by how creative puppeteers are. And so when they're on set, they have all these brilliant ideas and they try things and they experiment and they just come up with these most outlandish types of animations. So it must have been amazing to have the puppeteers there, and you guys could come up with movements. And
that's the thing, is finding like you would do an actor, we will constrain because we've done the animation to say this is kind of how he moves and these are the constraints to look real, these are the constraints. But then beyond that, to find a shot with the director, the actors, the DP, everybody, just to find the shot, that was the aim of everything that we did. Even the gimbal stuff, that for me from the beginning, I was like, we're the first animated, sort of CG animated movie to be remade. How analog could we make our process to try and make it feel as real as possible? But and I'm very aware as a VFX supervisor, you don't want technology having to, we can do anything, doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be bound by, obviously there's some stuff that we're going, no, we have to do it that way. But you just want to let it be, because that's what makes it feel real.
Yeah, but especially for the intimate parts, and especially for the most intimate scenes with the main actors. I mean, it must have been amazing to have that, and just to have the video assist and you watching it and playing it back and watching the performance. Did you guys have to record it in several plates, or you didn't really thought about that? Because I'm assuming the puppet was there on screen and you had to replace it. But did you take another take, or did you guys?
Are you laughing about clean plating? Is that what you're laughing about?
No, I'm laughing at the fact that I'm kind of like, because I guess the people I'm not popular with is probably paint and rotate department or whatever.
Oh, so they're all there.
But they are. But with the animation, with lighting, with all that, it's there, and
Yeah,
you're
you have
not
the
having to
perfect
fix stuff.
reference. Yeah.
But we generally, a lot of it was like we'd shoot the shot with Tom in there, and then often I'd be going up to him saying, "Look, next take, can you try?" And I was almost trying to get him to do some really like a contortionist kind of like, could you hold the head but have your feet over there? Because it's like, just don't occlude Mason. That was his challenge: is don't occlude him, because otherwise we'll have to make bits of him up. And
I love that.
but then we clean plated everything.
So you'd shoot a clean plate
at the end.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is now I honestly feel like, sadly I'm getting older, but now I feel age-wise that I'm kind of, that your first ADs, your producers and everything are sort of the same age as me now. I'm like, so they've grown up with visual effects. And it makes such a difference, because when you're saying clean plates, balls, HIs, it's like, oh yeah, that's normal.
Yeah,
that's normal.
part of the process.
You're not battling, and of course you want to be as quick as possible. But even with the camera guys, they're straight into tiles, pan, do all of that, and they do it all really quickly. Just as and they know it's really helpful. And as a supervisor, again, I'm always the one who wants to do the least that we can to get the shot, as opposed to getting everything that you could possibly. Well, I just want to get what we need to do the thing. But that has definitely made it easier. And to be honest, on a film like How to Train Your Dragon, if they're not giving us time to do the visual effects stuff, would be
no, it's a major part of the process.
But things have changed a lot. Like I think 10, 15 years ago when I was on set, you wouldn't have that kind of thing. People would not know what it was, or people would like either joke about the balls or not give you the time. I think things have changed dramatically.
Completely.
Yeah, they really changed a lot, which is really good. I'm really happy for that. And I guess like it's not a big deal to do a clean plate, even if it's not motion controlled. You can always line it up. It's easy enough these days to line it up, as it wasn't at the time. But it's like you said, the reference is the best part, to have an actual physical object there that has lighting reference, and has shadow reference, it has reflections. I even noticed that on the big gimbals, you have a very reflective Toothless on the gimbal. That's on purpose, right? Because he's so reflective.
At that point, it was. I think our mistake with and we made a few mistakes, of course, but we'd never, But like the puppet head was grey, and it's like it should have been black. Should have been black, because actually one of the hardest thing in post production was like, but is he black? He just looks grey. And then you didn't have a reference. And I think that the best visual effects just comes out of copying stuff. If you're making it up, that's when you're like, like anything, if you're making up a painting, it might not look, but if you're copying from something that's, you'll end up with something that's closer to
exactly.
But is it grey so that it doesn't bleed onto other parts of the set or anything?
No, I mean, the idea with the puppets is they're all like a base colour of what the dragon, and of course at that point we didn't really know exactly what the Pantone colour of a Monstrous Nightmare was going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
But yes, really, we were thinking of the usual sort of like, sort of greyish head. That would be more like the grey ball, I guess. But I think certainly for the next film, which I might be making at the moment, we're definitely going to have a black
Oh wow.
head, you know, because then you'll know that it's, and maybe, you know, it was matte as well, so maybe we'd have you'd want something with sheen. So when it came to the gimbals, the fact that by then it was a more sheeny black.
Yeah, I noticed that on the behind the
Right.
scenes.
Some of the other dragons were, you know, they were, again, it was all about having a base color and a sort of a rough thing.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I wasn't after, because again, what I don't want to do is ask for something that is a very, you know, to do anything that is photo finished would be very expensive, and I know we would replace it all. So it's that balance of getting something that's useful as a VFX reference. So generally, I think you're just trying to get something that can be your sticker, you know, your ball ref at the same time as. So we did have some, you know, other elements that we'd, you know, with other props and things, we'd always hold up, like Gobber's arm and things. We'd hold up the real thing in the lighting as we were doing it.
Yeah.
But with the dragons, it was kind of evolving, definitely evolving as we were shooting.
Yeah,
you know.
right. We're definitely going to ask you about gimbal shooting in a minute, but I thought I might just quickly bring something up, which is that I was so lucky to go on set for this film in Belfast.
And a really good day
It was, I mean, it couldn't have worked out better, Christian. So the day I got to be on set was when they were shooting Hiccup and Toothless in the Cove, where Hiccup is drawing something in the sand and Toothless copies. And then it becomes that scene of reaching out and touching. I mean, it's an iconic scene from the animated film. But, you know, the best thing about that for me, Christian, was that scene was already super powerful just on the Cove set with Tom doing the puppeteering and the puppet there. And there was music
and
playing.
the music playing in.
Music playing. But it was already brilliant just with that. And I'm like, oh my God, Framestore's going to bring a CG dragon and an environment. And, you know, then it'll be edited and cut and with all the sound. And it was amazing in the final film. But I just really enjoyed watching that process. You know, and it actually took Mason a couple times.
Yeah.
I think he was quite stressed about actually drawing the sketch on the sand.
It's because he'd actually, I think with that, he wasn't meant to, you know, he'd just sat there drawing something.
Of course.
And then it was like, oh, that's actually pretty good.
Yes.
So obviously then he had to do it again. But do it in.
But he was brilliant.
Do it for camera.
But he was so laser focused. You know, that was a really interesting thing to watch.
Mason is 2 weeks older than my eldest son. So at the time when we were filming was, what would he been, like 15 years old? The sheer maturity of his performance. Because his Hiccup is a very different Hiccup than Jay Baruchel's Hiccup, actually.
Agreed.
And I think that was a worry initially, that was he not geeky enough, but he kind of is. He's kind of still that kind of like, he is still the same, you know, base character. But physically, all the stuff he had to do physically, it was just astonishing to see that he could repeat and make it look like it was an accident again and again and again. One of those actors where, you know, he knew where he had to be, he knew where the camera was, knew all of those things, and not all actors are like that, you know. I kind of but he was amazing. So that kind of, from the very beginning, so I think right at the very, very beginning with the puppets, him and I think Nico, I was in Belfast, so I couldn't go, but Glenn went over with Dean, and they brought in some puppets from the Life of Pi stage show. They had a Richard Parker tiger puppet, and they introduced them in that way, and could see like, oh wow, this is going to be cool. And then, so because our ones were still being made, but by the time they were in rehearsals, they did rehearsals. You know, they rehearsed scenes. They rehearsed just like you would with it. And I think again, that's why hopefully it works, is because it was just really taken seriously that this other character that would be computer generated eventually, that part of it was the process to get him into the finished film. But he was there from the start, you know. And I think if that is taken seriously, it works, you know, by not only that, you know, by a director who cares about it, but a DP who's actually framing for him and caring about, does that work? But most importantly, by the actors who are sharing the screen with them, you know. And So yeah, I mean, it was kind of it was really nice because I feel like I got asked a question at a talk I did, a few weeks ago, of what was the thing that you learnt from doing Fantastic Beasts and all those films that you are the most glad that you when it came to how to make a training dragon, and for me it was the puppeteering. That was the bit that really was the really, really important. So yeah, no, it was kind of
You guys should release the CGI version with just the puppets and the
But you know,
like Planet of the Apes.
But you know that
Yeah.
Dean, they actually cut the befriending Toothless scene and also Test Drive as just the gimbals and whatever and cut that together as a possible DVD extra.
Yeah,
A
raw
raw cut.
version.
And I don't know whether that actually
We need it.
kind
We
of
need
like,
it.
The
Christian
Blu-ray
Manz.
isn't out yet, so maybe it's
yeah,
not,
because that kind of like is because like anything, if it's there, like with this film again, it was one of those ones that when you just watch the raw scenes, it worked.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
really great. So you knew that and it was actually more pressure. I actually felt more pressure to make it good because it was really good.
Yeah,
and you
already.
didn't want to be the guys who screwed it up.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest thing on our shoulders, I think, in the visual effects department, and certainly through post and delivering it, was like it was just really good. So the audience screenings were through the roof. The whatever was just with post vis and whatever, and so we knew. And Dean had that thing of where Dean's the most lovely, as he's lovely, but he'd just look at you and go, I don't want there to be any terrible shots that pull you out of the film.
It's a lot of pressure.
And as a viewer, I know those things where and as stuff that I've worked on, you're like, oh yeah, there's that shot that
There's
pulls you
one.
out.
Yeah.
But it was so important here, particularly with that really emotional stuff. You couldn't be pulled out. You have to just kind of watch it and believe, and I kind of think that's really, hard to do. And also because, Toothless is that, emotive character. He's the center of the story. He's almost number one on the call sheet, but he doesn't talk either. And so you've got to, it's really down to the talent of all of the animators and, Glenn working with Kane particularly to really draw that out, because that's why it works,
We want to talk to you about gimbals, and I reckon the reason we want to talk to you about it so much is because Hugo is obsessed with B-roll. And there is, including with the puppetry, but with the gimbal B-roll, Hugo, it is one of those films that just has such great behind the scenes of the B-roll. Tell us about going into this, making the dragons fly, especially Toothless. And there's a centerpiece sequence in the film called Test Drive, which comes from the animated film too. Going into that, like, what did you feel you needed to solve with flying?
The thing, because riding on I'd never heard the phrase buck, but now I use it kind of. But riding on a buck or a gimbal or whatever has become it's a standard thing, and it's used in multiple, But a lot of the time, for me, it just hasn't worked because you can sort of tell there's almost no connection between the thing you're riding when you actually stick the creature in or whatever it is and the rider. And I think we learnt a lot from we went on a recce very early on in pre-production. And we went to the Faroes and to Iceland and Scotland, and we were flying around in a helicopter, which Dean had never done before. He'd never been on a recce before. Never been in a helicopter doing all that before.
Yeah, because it's all animation.
So, and for somebody who has a place in Iceland, he'd never flown around. But the feeling that we had when you were being flown around through canyons and stuff, it was like, wow, you want this on the screen. And that's very hard to get, because often you film stuff in a helicopter and then you get back and go, hey, it looks really cool, and you play it back and you're like, oh, it doesn't look as cool. Maybe if I just speed it up a bit. And you always end up speeding it up about 3 times to make it feel fast, because it's, because a helicopter's actually not flying that fast. We worked out dragon speed was about 250 miles an hour in the end of our film, and a helicopter's doing less than 100 miles an hour. So that was a thing. How do we get that over? And that's where the Top Gun Maverick thing came over, because I think that film did it really well. And that film did it really well because they did go up and shoot in real planes, and you got the real performance, and you got that connection with the machines they were flying, So that was a really important thing. And I'd done a few sort of, over the years, things like Golden Compass. Framestore was actually the company that innovated with the team on Dinotopia back in 2000 in creating the first buck system that was computer controlled for people to ride dinosaurs, which then I think Attack of the Clones then followed up afterwards. And funny enough, our first AD who was on the gimbal unit was on that, and David Kane, our producer, was on that show.
Oh, wow.
So there was kind of like a circular thing. But again, much like the puppeteering and everything, I was really keen to, because usually how all that stuff works is it's like you pre-visit, you animate it, and you do it shot-based shooting, where you have a bloop light between at the beginning and end of the take. It's motion control cameras, and you're like, right, now rehearse, and then you'll now act and stop acting, and that's your shot. Again, here I kind of thought, I was trying to think, could we puppeteer could we have a puppeteered thing that actually isn't computer? Obviously, having my hands over the animation supervisor, but how could we make it that we didn't have to do all of that, but we could still have that performance? So we worked with with Alistair Williams's team, his Moco team, so Pete Britton and crew. They worked very closely with the Framestore team in, first of all, looking at what we were doing, because we'd already animated out Toothless in particular. If we use him as an example, we'd animated him out in terms of flight cycles. We'd got previs. But then throwing back and forth, how could we, because often those things are just the motion-based 6-axis gimbal. But here we had the idea of then having the buck on top of that would also be articulated, so that effectively the gimbal gave the overall body motion, but the buck would give the articulation. And here again, for the first time, they were throwing stuff back forward in Maya and Blender and designing. So the special effects team designing something that was based upon where the bones were in the rig for Toothless in the CG thing, and making sure that everything lined up. And then taking our, range of motion tests and animation tests and lining up, putting one over the other to see how close they could get.
Oh, so that you could fit them, right? Like, so it would fit
So
actually
it fit the motion and fit so it would, it would kind of, because obviously it's mechanical as well, so there's limits on everything.
And speed and everything, you can't really move it. Otherwise, also the G-forces, and
Yes.
you would throw the actors out, or.
But that was a really important thing as well, because usually we cheat all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why it feels CG to me,
Yeah,
personally.
because they're just slow.
Because you'll cut to the CG shot. And part of my thing as well was being very actually it wasn't a good film to use an example, because Bill had shot it, but The Matrix 2, we were looking at the bike chase in that, which is amazing.
Yep.
And then you cut to the insert of the actor, and you're seeing this, and then you cut to the actor, and then you cut to the thing, and then they're like,
it doesn't max them.
and
max
to
the
me
emotion.
that pulls me out all the time. So here, from the very beginning, I was like, they were like, yeah, but all these shots where he's just doing this, that'll be on the floor. And I was like, no, it's all going to be on the gimbal. Everything we shoot is going to be on the gimbal, whether it's an insert, whether it's everything has to match that motion. So I was very protective of that from the start. But then that process went back and forth, and then obviously eventually they started building the physical things, and then from there it was the tests. And we did go down the route of doing cycles or doing shot-specific stuff, but we also had cycles. The other innovation in there was the Waldo, so the remote control. effectively a remote control system so that you could actually drive the gimbal and the buck separately. They developed stuff so that we could run the animation cycles on the buck and the gimbal. We could remote control one or other of those and have the animation driving the other half of it, or we could blend between remote control and... So in the end, on the shoot, to cut a very long story short, it meant that much like the puppeteer, we could find the shots on the day.
Right.
Yeah.
The camera work was the talent of Bill Pope and Carsten and Guy, the key grip, and a large team as well working with a gimbal unit of basically looking at the shots. So we looked at the shots because I had a massive spreadsheet of working out and we were very bold in going, we're not going to do this because that's going to be CG. So we only shot what we needed, but what I thought we needed to capture for real. And we, a shooting day would be, what shot are we doing next? Come over to the TV. I'd almost go play the shot, and then I'd pull the in and out to the bit that we needed to get. So the guys would go off and camera-wise work out what they needed to do, whilst on the buck we'd go, right, so we need toothless, flight, aggressive. And we'd start playing that on the buck. We'd get the stunt double on there, and we'd get Mason on board and start developing the shot and the action together. And then we start shooting takes. And then when it was like, actually, do you know when Mason when he pulls that way, could you actually roll into use the Waldo to then match what he's doing? Or could you actually go do something that he's not anticipating? So again, finding it all in the day, and it's all those happy accidents that I kind of think help make it feel real.
It felt a bit more flexible. That's what I think.
It's completely, because we would not have, we had to get 130 setups.
Right.
Yeah, it would have taken it forever.
And in like less than 3 weeks of shooting. Yeah. And we finished early.
Would have been
and then we would never have ever got through it if it had all been just so prescriptive.
Yeah, with the light, it wouldn't. But we
had
taken
actors
forever.
speaking as well. We had performances that needed to happen. So I knew that we couldn't. It just couldn't. It couldn't work if we did it the normal way. But all of those things, I think, gave that flexibility again of finding it on a day. And if it wasn't quite as it was in the previs or whatever, doesn't matter. It does the right thing. And of course, another big thing was working with Dave Cheeseman and the who's our prop master, designing the saddles, and there were 7 different saddles because the story of him hiccup building it, eventually ending up in the one where he has the shoulder rings with the pedals on, that we in the end we had to work out where they needed to be so that Mason's feet could clip into them. Those were on pistons as well, so that they could feel, so they were going with the wings when he was moving them around. But we then came up, because actually early on in testing, as per the original design, it's a single saddle that he sits on, and it's like a pommel, like on a horse. And we realised, oh no, we've done all of this, and he's rigidly just riding in one thing. So we then added a collar to the thing with some handles that were on the head. So you had the because we were watching what we'd done in CG and gone, but that looks great. And then so you had the articulation through the body as well, right, Mason. And so all of that began to make it feel connected. And so with something like the Zippleback, 2 heads, again, I had, well, surely that's just going to be one person will be on a chair and the other person will be on a gimbal. And it's like, no, they're both going to have, because they're both going to have to move, and they're both acting to each other. So again, the guys designed, and we had a 2-headed buck on that was articulated, that could do all of the same stuff that both the actors could sit on. So we had a sort of a bespoke buck on top of the same gimbal base for each dragon. We had 2 toothlesses. We also had like a wedge that we could stick in, because I wanted, when Mason was going up into the air, he needed to have the gravity. So we put the whole buck was put at 45 degrees on top, so he actually was hanging on, and obviously they're strapped in. But then we had bespoke shots, like we had one shot where they have to
spinning
barrel roll, And so that became a collaboration between Stitches and Glue, who had made like a ride-on puppet rig that Tom and the shots where Mason and Nico had to get on and off of Toothless, that was a body with the same saddle, made from the same models, with the saddle on the same, so that they could be effectively carried in and then dropped off and they would get off of it. And then that was bolted onto what called the rotisserie rig. So between working with, the SFX and stunts, we had that it had no articulation within the body, but it could go 360 degrees around. So we could stick the actors on it. The camera was bolted to it. And then we got like 4 spins. I don't think Nico was quite expecting 4 spins, but we got 4 spins out of it. And that gave them, so in that shot, and that shot's one shot in the film, but it's just real because the reactions, the gravity, the inertia, the hair, everything's for real. There were lots and lots of different, when they're on top of the pinnacle, again, that was a puppeteered rig that Mason was on with Tom and the guys underneath it. It was hung from the ceiling by stunts, so that would take some of the weight. And then Nico climbed up and actually climbed on and jumped onto it.
Yeah.
And then the next shot when they're lifting off is a buckshot. So we needed to know how all of those bits would glue together eventually. But making sure that the goal for everything was to shoot as much for real as possible in terms of, and it's hard to get into everybody's heads, to be honest, that ultimately all we want is the person. We don't care about the Toothless rig and all that stuff. We just want the person to be doing the right thing. So when we stick the creature in, it will be doing it right. And again, it was a bit emotional in post-production, but in some
A bit emotional.
to get it all to glue together, we realised that our error there was we'd done everything based upon a model of Toothless standing up and designed the saddles and everything on him standing up. And so when we in post then got him into flight pose and put him underneath, it's like, the shoulders have moved, the rings have moved. So we had to design some extra saddle bits to attach in post and sort of redesign bits of it so the pedals would be in the right place, all that sort of stuff. But generally, again, I kind of think that sucks. And everybody got into it, the custom was coming out, they had stuff to almost everything's about stabilized heads. It was like, should we do this thing that can vibrate? And even when with the rig as well, we had, because we had designed, the guys designed for the Gronkel with Julian Dennison on top of it as fish legs, that it had a vibration to it because it's got, like a hummingbird, bumblebee-like wings. We had the idea that if he was like as well on top, so we had different levels of vibration, and we would turn that up to 11, I think, when we were filming with him. And then we had that in the rig for Toothless. So when Mason's going away from the Red Death at the end, that vibration was dialed up. So you just get that intensity, he's holding on, everything's shaking, the camera's shaking, everything's, and it's just, and Bill would ask me, is it okay if the camera, I was like, yes, because all that's for real. It's for real, And I'm not saying that's the thing as a visual effects supervisor. After I'm probably not saying, I think, if somebody else was with me, they go, don't do that, it's going to be really hard. And it's like, but it won't look real. And that's what exactly. I'm trying to protect.
And how did that all work? Like, did you recorded all that data so that you can take it, or was it tracked after? Were you actually recording the individual animation of the gimbal and also of the buck? And then also what witness cameras as well? How did that work?
In the end, it was because of how late, because to be honest, there was lots of stuff against us on the, and helped us, but we had a strike in the middle of our production, that in the end, it was, it's all witness cameras. So we just had black magic cameras around it. We had markers stuck on the, all the rigid parts of the rig, and then it was all tracked.
Okay, I see.
I think
so you couldn't use the data from
doing it again, we'd get the data out, I think, and that data I think would never be good, but for reference and to start us off and for post viz and everything, it would have been amazing. So I kind of think that again, doing it again, and that's the thing of like the opportunity like we had with Fantastic Beast, do it again and try and learn and kind of go, how can we do that better? That was definitely one of the things that you kind of like, yes, it would be useful to get all of that back out at the other end. So it's
I got to see a bit of the gimbal shooting, which was amazing, including Julian on the
on the Gronkel, yeah.
Gronkel. Two things about that. He was so high up that I was scared, but he was completely safe and tethered there, and they had lifts and everything, making sure he was safe. But he was brilliant because he'd be on it for quite a long time, repeating scenes. Although I remember what they shot with him, which was him banging a drum or something. Banging a shield. But I looked out for it in the film, and it's only briefly in like one of their arrival scenes.
I wanted to ask you something, because I watching the movie, and that was the only thing that took me out of the movie. Not that there was anything wrong with it. It was just my compositing brain. I was watching the movie, and I was like, how did I was just like so perplexed with how complex it must have been to comp these people into the CG, because you have so much interaction within the actors and the dragons. Their hands go through them, they hold them, they touch them, they're writhing them. Like, this must have been really, first of all, really difficult, but also like what kind of techniques did you guys use? Did you end up having to do complete CG doubles for them to just make parts of the legs and the arms, or did you use any kind of depth maps, or how did this work?
The answer is yes, we did all of that, I think.
At the same
and
time,
we did by the time we had shown Dean the first shot of the fully CG hiccup on Toothless, and it was like, all right. And even I kind of then got the confidence as to, maybe we can do. So there's some stuff in the film. One of the hardest sections of Test Drive is where he goes weightless, because it's so about the physics of and what Dean wanted it to do versus the physics of what actually would happen, even in pre-vis to post-vis to the final shots. That was the longest section to work out. And in the end, a lot of that, even when he comes off and the camera's framed here and he's lifting off of that.
And you see the buckles and...
That's all full CG.
Well, I see,
like,
okay.
You're in here on the...
This is just because you couldn't really film this, like there would have been...
We did film it. We did film it and lifted him out, but we realised that to get the rhythm of the shot in the end, it was like, we need the camera to be moving here, and we need this to happen, we need that, and to get all three shots to hook together, we a lot of it is CG, and we used Mason's face in some of it and replaced all of him. But again, the aim was always just to keep reality. So even though it was CG, it was still based upon the reality of where everything was. Yeah, but yes, there was a lot of occlusion from the rig, or
had to put the legs back.
An ask of animation was that actually it didn't quite fit. So there was quite a bit of that, and even shots where, again, I'd never shoot anything from behind again, because there was one shot of him going through when Hiccup drops into the C-stacks at the end of Test Drive, and we're behind him, and we'd shot that as well. And then I think Andy, much to the chagrin of the producer, showed us the full CG render of him, and it was like, well, that's it, isn't it? It just looks real, and he's in lighting, and and that was the toughest thing, was the usual thing. I was a compositor, and the difficulty of a blue screen interior lit thing that we've then got to stick in is still the thing that's really hard. Yeah. And we had to do a lot of stuff the compers worked really hard to sit all that stuff together. But obviously when we could stick the CG version in, even if it was just to look at what that looked like, so that you knew what we were aiming for and all that sort of stuff, but yeah, it was a real combo of everything. And I think, and I've been slightly reticent in making ofs of showing all of that stuff, because you kind of hope that people don't know where it is.
We don't. I don't.
That's the thing, and I kind of
That's why I was so puzzled, and I was so. In some way, watching the movie, this is the problem. We work in this industry. We can't really watch a movie.
Yes. No. Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm watching watching the movie, and I'm, instead of watching the story, I'm like, how did they comp that light and that leg? And it's just so.
I mean, one of the hardest flying shots was actually one that the Framestore Montreal team did, and Francois Lambert, who's the supervisor for that team was actually on the gimbal unit. He was there prepping, so it was good that he'd had that time. But the shot where the gang turn up around the Red Death, and there's one long shot of which we had actually previs as coverage, and it was actually Wyatt Smith, our editor, was like, well, it'd be better as one shot, wouldn't it? Where we where it's like, fish legs, tell us what it is. It's got large eyes, it's got whatever, and then Hiccup comes in, and then the other guy, the Rough Nut and Tough Nut, come into it, and they're spinning around the and so we previewed something, and everybody loved it, and it was like, how are we going to do it? And again, I kind of in my head, and it is my old comp brain, but I was like, well, we weren't doing motion control, but everybody was flying separately, and in the end, it came to shooting those across that shot was shot across about 3 or 4 weeks with the actors on different gimbals, and it came down to Lizzie Pritchard, the script soup, and me doing overlays and going left a bit, right a bit, left a bit. It's that's what we're aiming for, and then shooting something and then doing mix and overlays, check it kind of lined up, that they looked at each other, and then I knew we'd got it, and I knew or hoped that we'd do CG takeovers that would get us in between, so when they're speaking they're real, and then we'd do things like let them make it feel that the camera had panned off of them, and then they come back in their CG and they catch up and all that sort of stuff. So you're just, the design of that shot is all in that camera work and choreography later on to try and make it feel that you don't realize where those takeovers are and everything. And it's, so that was, I really enjoy that sort of stuff.
But my thinking behind that, when you need to do CG characters, CG takeovers of the human characters, is why not take advantage of the level that Framestore can get to with digidoubles, right? You've got probably these amazing booth scans from clear angle.
Yes.
You've got a workflow where you've done CG humans so many times before. I mean, why not do it? One of the challenges that Hugo and I talk about a lot in the industry at the moment is, we'd rather hear that it was all real, shot for real. Yeah. But if it looks just as good, and you did shoot something real as reference to see what it might look like, and you can get to this photorealism
completely. And I think a lot of the stuff was, again, even with stunts, because Roy did a lot. They did a lot. We had some great when Hiccup's trying to get back onto Toothless. That was again a puppet rig on a thing that they were wiring him away from it so that he couldn't get there, and then eventually they would get, after every take they were coming, was that enough? It's like, no, pull him away more, so he's just even more strong, so you get that performance. But I could see that even when we were doing that, it's like, well, he's not able to hold his legs up in the right, so we'll replace him from the waist down, because then his legs will be right, but we've got all that performance from him from the waist up, and that's the thing, is I don't see any, you've got to make it, film is a, it's an artifice. It's what I've always loved about film is what's in that rectangle when you're shooting is the world. To the left of that, there might be a grip with having a cup of coffee or a whatever, but that rectangle is the world, and you don't know, and how that's been achieved in terms of, and I do think a lot of time the stuff, and that's what you endeavour to do. I mean, I say, being a visual effects supervisor, certainly a production side visual effects supervisor, half my job is trying to stop visual effects happening. You want to try and get as much of it for real, because for many reasons, and mostly because it will always look better. But obviously you're flying you're flying a dragon over. I mean, one of the biggest, another thing was the environments, because we shot helicopter plates. Dom Ridley from Clear Angle came with us, and we captured like about 30 odd locations with photogrammetry, and sort of massive photogrammetry captures, sort of like kilometers worth of stuff. Because again, I have in years gone past, I've seen, where you do the thing of shooting a plate and then you stick your flying creature in it, but then your animation is bound by what that camera move did. And we couldn't know, in no way could we shoot anything that we'd know what Toothless would be doing. And also we were in a helicopter
You would
not a
have to use an
drone.
F-16. You would have to use an actual plane.
Yeah,
Like, it
you'd have
would
to
have
be
been
fast
impossible,
and to know where he is. So the sell from me from the beginning was the environments are going to have to be CG because we'll want to drive the camera by by the action. And that was one of the bits where that was the thing I was most nervous of about the whole thing, was the backgrounds, because they just had to look real.
Yeah.
There was no
Well,
fantasy.
partly
There was
because
no...
you've got multiple kinds of backgrounds. There's clouds,
Yes.
sky. You go down to the water level,
Yeah.
through those cliffs and things,
Yeah.
and then just over Burke.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of different
A
environments.
lot of different
to
stuff,
consider.
and so again, it's all about, for me, shooting those plates because that's real, and you can look at that real stuff while you're generating the CG stuff and lighting it, and
you have the reference.
and it also meant that we could light to match we could put the sun in the same place as it was on the gimbal. We could do all of that stuff with but that's. So to me, half the success of those scenes is the environments, as well as because that marriage of the cinematography, the background, and the dragon, and the actor is what it kind of all sticks together. But I think they really succeeded. I mean, I kind of think, again, it also gave everything, to be honest, everything looked the same, everything married together. We weren't jumping between plates and CG and wherever. Everything kind of had a look, and that kind of also helps when you're watching a film like that.
Yeah,
I think,
totally.
I wanted to ask you about the lighting, actually, since now we're just mentioning the environments. I'm assuming, because normally when you see these kind of shoots, like, they tend to try their best to do a LED stage or a projection system. Like, I'm assuming that was because it was just impossible to get that kind of footage into the screens, probably, if you wanted to try it. So so that's why you guys opted with blue screen instead, and just having...
Yeah, we shot we lit with sumo walls. So there were sumo walls, which are large LED walls. They're kind of almost like Venetian blinds, but with rows of LEDs that are very light.
I see. So you had the light.
So we had six of those that gave a lot of light, and we tried, because you can run video through them. You can do exactly everything that you can do with a LED wall. But actually the color just looked odd, and also that whole thing of process of getting what color should that video be to give the right light on the camera that through the lens then kind of looks right. So in the end, we lit often with white light, but then we had Framestore rendered different. So we had different gobos rendered. So like if we were going through a rock stack, we had sort of different blockers that would be rendered that would work across where the panels were hanging, so that we had some interaction and movement in them. And again, that wasn't all scientifically done. It was just done so it just looked like there was some movement. But that did give a lot of, I think in filmmaking now, some of the biggest innovations are being done in lighting. Is changed in the last 5 years or whatever, with LEDs, as well as grip gear, camera gear, But I think, and that really has helped as well in getting shots much easier now, because with those two things. But yeah, I mean, ultimately we want to cut the person out.
Yeah.
So we need the blue screen, but we want them to be lit as well as they can be. And those things pump out a lot of... That's the thing, is if you're going to look like you're outside, you have to be pumping out a lot of light.
Yeah. But was there any time, at any moment, any consideration of doing anything with the volume? Were you even thinking about it?
We did very briefly, but I knew it's just all about the media that you'd put into it, and I knew we just wouldn't have it. So it was, and that we'd replace it all, And again, that's the, I just don't think it would have given us any more. I mean, again, it was almost going back to using a frame, but going back to the gravity thing, that it was for lighting, it wasn't for the backgrounds, it was, and that's what we were doing really, but in
and also, I don't think, now thinking about it, I don't think it would even work, because the camera movements you have, the rotations and the super angles, the wide angles, you wouldn't have a stage big enough
to contain it. Yeah.
You would have seen the ends of the stage.
Well, that was the thing with the tech viz that the guys had done, which showed what the camera was actually doing in that, and it was like, well, the cameras started in the middle of Belfast, and then it's flying at like.
Yeah.
So obviously the tech viz in the end was kind of to zero out all the translation on a Dragon and get a relationship with the camera to kind of get an idea. But what I realised through doing it is when you're working with people who can do their job pretty well is they just look at the image and go, I know what the camera's got to do, I'll go off and do that. You know, they don't need to be shown a diagram of where it needs to be. But yeah, it was kind of like, yeah, that whole thing of marriage of lighting and everything is a difficult thing. But also the thing with the LED thing, again, as somebody who's a responsible VFX supervisor, it's really expensive.
It is.
I was going to say
really, 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 really expensive. Yeah. And I remember on Fantastic Beasts 3, actually, George Richmond had thought there was a scene that we had to do in the end inside that was meant to be outside. And he went and saw a demo and he came back to me and said, I don't think we can even go to production and ask for that. Because, and in the end, that was silks and, silks, lots of light, shooting at the same stop that was inside, outside, all of that stuff that actually, in the end, when you looked at the raw dailies of that, you're like, oh, I can't tell, and it's, so I kind of, I'm one for, I have imposter syndrome all the time because I just feel like I'm lucky enough to work with people who are really, really good at what they do. And, that's on the production side and, and in the post-production side. And I think when you get that sort of alchemy of working with, excellent camera people and, you get that stuff without even trying, to be honest.
One thing that seems to have cropped up with volume filming isn't just whether you can get good lighting interaction or anything like that. Can be a perception on the production side that you're trying to get it in camera, even if you're not.
Oh, yes.
And then when you don't get any of it in camera or one or two shots, then the fear is that it's costing all this money to do it again.
Well, because it's a double spend. If you do it with you're spending it all in pre-production and shoot, and then you're spending still the same amount of money to do as, I think, in whatever you're doing, you've got to be, these days, you've got to be very, you've got to be responsible and you've got to be trying to do things once. And that came down to, even with our stuff, Roy would be like, well, I could get, our guys to do that stunt on and I was like, but I know it's going to be, I know that will end up being CG, but actually if we can video, a good example of it was when Astrid's dropped off by Toothless on the beach, when she's upside down and then dropped off. And Yaz, who was her Nico stunt double, was amazing. And Roy had shown us a video of them setting it up in a stage where she was swinging off a thing. And it's like, can we get that video? And that became, we didn't shoot it because I knew that basically because she'd be holding the wrong parts of Toothless and all that sort of thing. But the animators used it to copy. Yeah. Because then you were coming off of something that had already been done. And so it tries to sort of add a bit of, because again, it's all of that. Again, the other hardest thing to do is always the human animation part of it, I think, because as humans, like everything, you instantly know whether that's real or not. And so that stuff's and I'm all for trying to taper it into the reality of what you could physically do. As I think often when we're pushing what you could physically do, and you're like, oh yeah, that's not real, So it's it's kind of fun.
Well, Christian, I think we could talk about How to Train Your Dragon for 5 hours with you, but we really must let you go. It's been so awesome having you in the bunker talk about this work.
No, it's been really nice to come and be here. It's kind of nice to actually do this sort of a podcast in person. It's so rare these days, actually, isn't it, to actually do something in person? So yeah, absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
I must say, since you're not going to do it, I'm just going to tell everyone that if they want to know more about, I don't get paid for this, but if you want to know more about this movie, there's this magazine made by someone that I know that is really good.
Oh, well, it's all thanks to Christian, really,
Yeah,
who
yeah.
gave me so much access to the filmmakers.
No, but it's a
make
real. It's so nice to actually have something physically in print these days, but also something that really focuses on that kind of like the craft of everything, that went into bringing that to life. So it's
I will recommend everyone
Yeah.
because it's an amazing magazine, an amazing issue.
Thanks for the plug.
No, but it. Well, you're not paying me for it, but I kind of figure that people, if they want to know more about this movie and how it was made, it's all there. Like everything is there. So which is great. So
Yeah, thanks, Hugo. Thanks, Christian. We love having you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It's been more than a pleasure.
Cool. Okay, well, see you everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone. It was a good sign off.